Every human being craves love, yet many run from it, especially the avoidant soul. They don't run because they don't care. They run because closeness feels unsafe. But here's the secret. When someone learns how to make them feel safe, when someone learns the move that whispers, I see you, I don't control you, I don't chase you, and I won't abandon you, that's when the avoidant comes back. The world will tell you that. Avoidants are cold, detached, unfeeling, but that's not truth. The truth is, behind that armor is a heart starving for connection. And the one who unlocks that heart isn't the one who pushes harder, it's the one who holds steady, the one who radiates a love that doesn't demand but invites. Here's what happens. When you stand firm in your own worth, when you dawn and collapse into fear or grasping, you send a signal. Send, I am whole, I am here. I am not leaving myself to keep you. That signal is irresistible because avoidants fear being consumed, but they long to be chosen. And when you prove you can hold both, their independence and your presence, they find themselves drawn back again and again. This is not manipulation. This is not a trick. This is alignment with a higher principle, love without fear, patience without desperation, strength without aggression. When you embody this, you stop chasing and they start returning. Not because you forced it, but because you tapped into the divine law of love. What is safe, what is steady, what is true, always calls us home. So if you've ever wondered why avoidants keep circling back, understand this. They don't come back to games. They don't come back to pressure. They don't come back to people who lose themselves. They come back to the soul who knows the secret move, to be a calm, unshakable presence that honors their freedom while embodying love. And when you master this, you don't just win them back. You awaken a part of them they thought they had to bury forever. You become the mirror that reminds them. Love is not a prison. Love is a sanctuary. And that is the kind of love no one ever wants to leave. Safety is the true magnet that pulls people closer, especially for those who struggle with avoidant tendencies. You have to understand, avoidance doesn't come from a lack of love. It comes from fear. Fear of being trapped, fear of being smothered, fear of losing themselves in the process of intimacy. At the core, an avoidant is someone who has learned that closeness often equals pain. Maybe they grew up in an environment where love felt conditional, where every time they let someone in, they were criticized, judged, or abandoned. So they built walls. They created distance as their survival strategy. And when you try to crash through those walls with force or demand, you only reinforce their fear that closeness means danger. That's why safety, above everything else, is what breaks through. Imagine this: if you walk up to a wild animal in the forest and charge straight at it, what does it do? It runs. Not because it hates you, but because it doesn't know if it can trust you. But if you sit quietly, if you soften your energy, if you show that you're not a threat, eventually that animal may inch closer to you. Human beings are no different. We crave safety before we crave connection. Without safety, connection feels like a trap. But when safety is present, connection feels like freedom. This is the paradox of love for the avoidant. They want love desperately, but they want to know they won't lose themselves in it. Safety provides the container where both people can exist fully without suffocation. Safety is not about coddling. It's not about walking on eggshells. It's about becoming a grounded presence that communicates through action and energy. When you are free, you are respected, and I'm not here to take anything from you. When an avoidant senses that, something powerful shifts inside them. Their nervous system relaxes, their guard lowers. They may not even understand They feel drawn back to you, but the reason is safety. You become the person with whom they don't have to armor up. And that is magnetic. So many people get this wrong. They think the way to break an avoidance pattern is to push harder, to demand answers, to force closeness. But that's like trying to hold water in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes. The key is to open your hand, to let it flow, to prove through your calmness that you are not going to crush them. That is safety. And paradoxically, the moment you stop grasping is the moment they start returning. Safety is also about consistency, not dramatic highs and lows, not playing games to get a reaction. The avoidant has lived through unpredictability before, and that's why they resist. If your energy is calm, steady, consistent, they start to trust it. They realize they don't have to brace for impact with you. They realize they can exhale, and that's when they find themselves pulled closer. Not because you convince them, not because you tricked them, but because safety is the most attractive energy on earth. Think about your own life. Who are the people you keep going back to? Not the ones who make you feel judged, not the ones who pressure you, but the ones who let you breathe, the ones who don't punish your silence, the ones who don't make you feel small for needing space. That's who you return to, because your soul knows, here, I am safe. Avoidants are no different. Behind their patterns is a heart that longs for a place where they can finally rest. And this is the truth. When you embody safety, you don't just win the attention of an avoidant, you win their trust. And trust is the foundation of love that lasts. Without safety, love collapses under the weight of fear. But with safety, love expands into something unbreakable. And when an avoidant feels that, they will keep coming back, because deep down, it's all they've ever been looking for. Safety is the true magnet that pulls people closer, especially for those who struggle with avoidant tendencies. You have to understand, avoidance doesn't come from a lack of love. It comes from fear. Fear of being trapped, fear of being smothered, fear of losing themselves in the process of intimacy. At the core, an avoidant is someone who has learned that closeness often equals pain. Maybe they grew up in an environment where love felt conditional, where every time they let someone in, they were criticized, judged, or abandoned. So they built walls. They created distance as their survival strategy. And when you try to crash through those walls with force or demand, you only reinforce their fear that closeness means danger. That's why safety, above everything else, is what breaks through. Imagine this. If you walk up to a wild animal in the forest and charge straight at it, what does it do? It runs, not because it hates you, but because it doesn't know if it can trust you. But if you sit quietly, if you soften your energy, if you show that you're not a threat, eventually that animal may inch closer to you. Human beings are no different. We crave safety before we crave connection. Without safety, connection feels like a trap. But when safety is present, connection feels like freedom. This is the paradox of love for the avoidant. They want love desperately, but they want to know they won't lose themselves in it. Safety provides the container where both people can exist fully without suffocation. Safety is not about coddling. It's not about walking on eggshells. It's about becoming a grounded presence that communicates through action and energy. When you are free, you are respected, and I'm not here to take anything from you. When an avoidant senses that, something powerful shifts inside them. Their nervous system relaxes, their guard lowers. They may not even understand why they feel drawn back to you, but the reason is safety. You become the person with whom they don't have to armor up, and that is magnetic. So many people get this wrong. They think the way to break an avoidance pattern is to push harder, to demand answers, to force closeness. But that's like trying to hold water in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes. The key is to open your hand, to let it flow, to prove through your calmness that you are not going to crush them. That is safety. And paradoxically, the moment you stop grasping is the moment they start returning. Safety is also about consistency, not dramatic highs and lows, not playing games to get a reaction. The avoidant has lived through unpredictability before, and that's why they resist. If your energy is calm, steady, consistent, they start to trust it. They realize they don't have to brace for impact with you. They realize they can exhale, and that's when they find themselves pulled closer, not because you convinced them, not because you tricked them, but because safety is the most attractive energy on earth. Think about your own life. Who are the people you keep going back to? Not the ones who make you feel judged, not the ones who pressure you, but the ones who let you breathe, the ones who don't punish your silence, the ones who don't make you feel small for needing space. That's who you return to, because your soul knows here, I am safe. Avoidants are no different. Behind their patterns is a heart that longs for a place where they can finally rest. And this is the truth. When you embody safety, you don't just win the attention of an avoidant, you win their trust. And trust is the foundation of love that lasts. Without safety, love collapses under the weight of fear. But with safety, love expands into something unbreakable. And when an avoidant feels that, they will keep coming back, because deep down, it's all they've ever been looking for. The power of calm consistency is one of the greatest forces in human connection, especially for those who carry avoidant patterns. Think about it. People who pull away from loseness aren't doing it because they don't care. They're doing it because their nervous system has been wired to expect chaos when intimacy shows up. They've seen inconsistency, instability, and emotional unpredictability before, and they've learned to brace themselves against it. That's why the person who becomes consistent, who becomes calm, who shows up without pressure or drama, creates a gravitational pull that is almost impossible to resist. Avoidants are not testing you with their distance, though it may feel that way. They are protecting themselves. When they pull away, it's because they fear losing control, and what they're unconsciously waiting for is to see how you'll respond. If you respond with panic, if you start chasing, if you swing from warmth to coldness depending on their reaction, It only confirms their fear that intimacy equals instability. But if you remain steady, if you don't collapse into desperation or anger, if you stay calm and rooted in who you are, you communicate something much deeper than words. I am safe. I am not going anywhere. And I don't need to control you to love you. That consistency breaks through their defenses like nothing else. Consistency doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean suppressing your needs or pretending to be emotionless. What it means is reliability. It means that your energy is not dependent on every shift in their behavior. It means you're not hot today and cold tomorrow. You become a steady presence that they can begin to predict. And predictability is everything to someone who has lived with the unpredictability of love. They need to know that you are not going to explode when they need space. They need to know that you are not going to punish them when they come closer. They need to know that your love is not going to swing wildly like a storm. When they see that calm consistency, they begin to lean into it. It's like the ocean. Imagine standing by the shore. If the waves are crashing violently, you won't want to step in. But when the tide is steady, when the rhythm is predictable, when you can see a pattern you can trust, you feel safe enough to enter. Calm consistency is that rhythm in a relationship. It's what tells the avoidant on each step closer. You won't drown here. And slowly, almost without realizing it, they find themselves coming back again and again to that steady rhythm because it's rare, it's healing, and it's the very thing they've been missing. So many people sabotage this without even realizing it. They get pulled into the avoidance push and pull. They mirror the inconsistency. They start reacting instead of responding. But when you rise above that cycle, when you choose steadiness over chaos, you not only break the pattern, you become unforgettable to them because you've given them an experience of love that doesn't shake when they shake, that doesn't collapse when they pull away. Calm consistency is not passive. It is powerful. It says, I know who I am. I know what I bring. I don't need to chase and I don't need to punish. I can stand firm and you'll know exactly where to find me. And that is magnetic because deep down, the avoidant is searching for someone who can be both strong and safe, someone who can hold their ground without holding them hostage. When you embody this kind of consistency, you become the anchor in their storm. And even though they may drift, even though their fear may cause them to run, they will keep coming back to the place where their soul feels calm. Because in a world of instability, the one who offers steadiness is the one they cannot forget. Subtle emotional presence is the invisible thread that binds people together, often more powerfully than constant words or actions. For someone with avoidant tendencies, overt displays of affection, demands for closeness, or loud declarations of love can feel overwhelming. They may pull away, not because they don't feel anything, but because the intensity feels like a tidal wave that threatens to drown them. What draws them back is something quieter, something softer, something that doesn't scream, "Look at me," but instead whispers, "I'm here and I'm not going anywhere." That subtlety becomes the language their heart understands. Emotional presence isn't about being physically around all the time. It's about the energy you project, even in silence. It's about the way someone can feel you without you needing to remind them every second. This presence is built through the little things, the steady tone of your voice when you do speak, the calmness you embody when they withdraw, the way your energy doesn't vanish when they need space, but also doesn't invade when they're not ready. It's that delicate balance of being there without suffocating. For an avoidant, this is rare. It communicates to matter, but I don't need to chase you to prove it. And that creates a pull they can't explain. Think of it like the warmth of the sun. The sun doesn't announce itself. It doesn't beg you to notice it. It simply shines consistently, softly, steadily. You can feel its presence. Even when clouds cover it, you can sense it without it being intrusive. That's the kind of presence that makes an avoidant feel safe. They don't need a floodlight blasting into their eyes. They need that subtle warmth that says, "I'm here," whether or not they look directly at you. This is why avoidants often return to people who don't smother them, because that energy feels different from what they're used to. It's love without pressure. Subtle emotional presence also has a way of reaching deeper than words. Many people make the mistake of trying to convince an avoidant with endless conversations, with logic, with promises. But presence speaks a different language. Presence says more in silence than words could ever carry. When you can sit with someone without needing to fill the space, when your calmness radiates even in their absence, they feel that. It becomes something they associate with you. And even when they walk away, they miss it because it's not something they find everywhere. This kind of presence comes from inner wholeness. It's not about waiting anxiously or pretending you're fine. It's about genuinely being rooted in yourself, so much so that your energy communicates security whether you're together or apart. Avoidants are drawn back to that because it doesn't demand from them, it doesn't trigger their fear of losing autonomy, and yet it nourishes them in a way they can't resist. It allows them to breathe, but also reminds them of connection. And that paradox, freedom with connection, is exactly what they've been searching for. Presence doesn't fade when you're not talking. Presence doesn't disappear when you're not in the same room. It is the subtle impression you leave on their soul by how you show up, calm, consistent, steady, but not overbearing. That's what echoes in their mind long after a conversation ends. They may distract themselves, they may run, but in the quiet moments they feel that presence and it calls them back. This is why subtle emotional presence is a secret power. It's not flashy, it doesn't look like effort, but it creates a magnetic bond that's hard to describe and impossible to ignore. An avoidant may not even be able to explain why they keep returning, but the truth is it's the presence they can't forget. The quiet assurance that you're there without demand, without pressure, simply existing as a steady light in their life. That is what softens their walls. That is what draws them back again and again. Unshakable self-worth is one of the most powerful forces in relationships, and it is especially magnetic to someone with avoidant tendencies. Many people make the mistake of thinking they need to prove themselves to be chosen, that they must work harder, chase more, or bend over backwards to win the love of someone who keeps pulling away. But this only creates the opposite effect. When you lose yourself in the pursuit of another, you send the message that your value is dependent on their response. To an avoidant, that feels like pressure, and pressure is the very thing that makes them run. What keeps them coming back is the presence of someone who knows their worth so deeply that they don't need to beg for love, perform for it, or manipulate to receive it. That strength becomes irresistible. Avoidants fear being consumed in relationships. They are terrified of someone needing them so much that they lose their own center. That's why when they encounter someone who is solid in their identity, someone who radiates confidence without arrogance, it feels safe. It tells them, I will not disappear into you, and I will not demand that you disappear into me. Unshakable self-worth communicates freedom. It tells the avoidant, and I want you, but I don't need you to complete me. And that distinction changes everything, because when you no longer need their love to feel whole, you stop pressuring them to fill your emptiness. Instead, you become a partner, not a dependent. Think of the people you admire most in life. They are not the ones who cling to others desperately, but the ones who stand tall in their value, who know who they are even when no one is watching. That kind of energy draws others naturally. It's not needy, it's not demanding, it's not desperate, it's magnetic. An avoidant may resist someone who is chasing them, but they cannot resist the pull of someone who is deeply rooted in their own worth. That person becomes a mystery, a force they want to understand because it feels different from the patterns they're used to. Self-worth is not about arrogance or pretending you don't care. It's about living in alignment with the truth that you are already enough. It's about not shrinking yourself to be accepted and not inflating yourself to impress. It's about knowing your love has value, your presence has weight, and your life as meaning regardless of who stays or who goes. When you carry that energy, the avoidant feels it. And instead of being repelled, they are intrigued, because here is someone who does not crumble in the face of their distance. Here is someone who does not chase frantically when they pull away. Here is someone who can hold their own. That level of inner strength awakens something inside of them. When you lack self-worth, you become reactive to their every move. When they step back, you panic. When they return, you overinvest. That inconsistency teaches them that love equals chaos, and they retreat further. But when your self-worth is steady, your energy doesn't fluctuate with their actions. You stay centered, you stay grounded, and you show them through your calmness that love doesn't have to mean losing control. This steadiness is like oxygen for the avoidant, because they have been conditioned to believe relationships are suffocating. Unshakable self-worth proves the opposite, that low PE can coexist with freedom, that closeness can exist without collapse. This is why avoidants keep coming back to people who carry this energy. They may leave, they may run, but they remember how it felt to be around someone who didn't lose themselves. They remember the quiet strength, the confidence, the sense of being wanted but not demanded. It plants a seed in their mind, the realization that real love isn't about control or neediness, but about two whole beings choosing to walk together. and that seed keeps pulling them back. When you live from unshakable self-worth, you don't just attract avoidance, you attract anyone who is seeking real love. Because people may be dazzled by charm, they may be pulled by intensity, but in the end, what we all return to is stability, confidence, and truth. And that is what unshakable self-worth radiates. Patience that outlasts their fear is the final key that unlocks the heart of an avoidant, because their primary struggle is not with love itself, but with the fear that love will consume them or expose them to pain they cannot handle. Avoidants are wired to anticipate danger and intimacy. They expect that closeness will eventually lead to disappointment, rejection, or loss of freedom. So they run not because they don't feel deeply, but because they feel too deeply and are terrified of what might happen if they let go. Most people, when faced with this pattern, lose their patience. They demand clarity, they push for answers, they react to the pullback with anger or insecurity. And while that reaction is human, it only confirms the avoidance fears. It teaches them, Tsitsi, love equals pressure, love equals chaos. But when someone is patient enough to hold steady through those storms, when their patience outlasts the avoidance fear, something remarkable happens. The walls begin to crumble. Patience is not passive waiting. It is active strength. It is the quiet confidence of knowing that connection cannot be rushed, that trust cannot be forced, that love cannot be demanded. It's standing in the truth that real intimacy unfolds in its own time. For the avoidant, this is revolutionary, because their experience of love has often been filled with urgency, control, and expectation. Patience communicates, "Send I see your fear, and I don't need to fight it. I'm here and I am not going anywhere, but I also don't need you to move faster than you're ready." That message seeps into the deepest layers of their being, and though they may resist it at first, they eventually recognize its rarity. Think about what fear does to a person. It accelerates them. It makes them reactive. It convinces them to escape before they even process what is happening. Fear thrives in urgency, but patience dissolves urgency. When you slow down, when you refuse to push, you take the oxygen out of fear's fire. Suddenly, the avoidant doesn't feel hunted. They don't feel like they're about to be cornered. They begin to breathe. And in that breath-in, G-space, their nervous system starts to relax. That's when they feel safe enough to step closer. This doesn't mean you allow yourself to be mistreated, or that you wait endlessly without boundaries. Patience is not about erasing your needs. It's about not letting fear dictate your energy. It's about understanding that progress in love, especially with someone carrying avoidant patterns, often looks like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. When you expect that, you don't panic when they retreat. You don't collapse when they need space. Instead, you hold steady. And that steadiness becomes the signal that calms their fear. When you embody this kind of patience, you're not saying, take as long as you want and I'll tolerate anything. You're saying, I trust the timing of love more than I fear the delay. I know what I bring, and I know that pressure will never create closeness, so I am willing to let this unfold. That willingness is magnetic because it's so different from what the avoidant expects. They are used to people reacting to their fear with anger or desperation. They are not used to someone who holds space, who can see the fear but not be swallowed by it. That patience becomes the most healing medicine they've ever tasted. And here's the truth. When your patience outlasts their fear, you don't just win their return. You help transform their relationship with intimacy itself. Because each time they pull away and see that you remain calm, consistent, and patient, they start to learn a new story, that love can be safe, that love can wait, that love doesn't punish them for being afraid. This rewiring takes time, but patience is the bridge, and the one who can stand on that bridge long enough becomes unforgettable. Avoidants keep coming back to those who embody patience because deep down, that patience tells them something they've been aching to hear all their life. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You don't have to move faster than you're ready. You do. You have to fight me. I can wait until you see for yourself that love is not a trap. That realization doesn't just soften their fear, it awakens their desire. And that's why patience, more than intensity, more than urgency, is the secret move that keeps them returning again and again. And so, remember this, love is never about force. It is about presence, patience, and truth. Avoidants don't keep coming back because of games, pressure, or intensity. They return to the one who creates safety, respects their freedom, stays consistent, radiates subtle presence, holds unshakable self-worth, and practices patience that outlasts fear. When you embody these principles, you don't just attract someone back into your life. You invite them into healing, into freedom, into love that is bigger than fear. That is a kind of love the soul longs for. Thank you for giving your time, your heart, and your energy today. Keep walking with courage, keep standing in your worth, and keep choosing love over fear. Until we meet again, take care, stay strong, and goodbye.